Well, here we are again. It's this is Friday the 13th. Dun, dun, dun. And we have got a vintage VSA500 sitting on the workshop. And this is a sort of 335 style semi-acoustic guitar with kind of everything you'd expect to find on it. In this case, we have a rattly jack socket, which I tighten up. We have usual 3-position toggle, 2 volumes, 2 tones, 2 pneumatic bridge, which is leaning backwards a little bit, if I say so, but stop bar, 2 Wilkinson humbuckers, and we have a Corduroy Neck. Now I call this corduroy, but it's that tech wood that became quite popular in guitars, budget guitars, during the sights restrictions era, when rosewood was not a doable thing. Now here at this end we have a new bone, I think, nut, and I'll just have a quick zoom up at this end to see what it calls itself. I think it's new bone. Can I even see what the royal thingy am I looking at? Yes, new bone XLD type of thing. Supposedly a kind of tusk equivalent, but I don't find this one works very well, so we're going to change it out for a tusk. I don't know what the composition of new bone is. Yeah, observations from somebody online. These are replacement tuners, so they've gone from being so-so quality to worse quality. So these are definitely not original. Now, on a plus side, you actually got some marks here too, where some glue or something has got rubbed around. It could be, looking at it, sort of, could be something split or was glued, I don't know, but anyway, yeah, on the plus side there's a lot of whatever. I think they filled the original holes with nail varnish. That's what they've done, and then swiped it sideways before it was dry. You see that? And that's left a trail of stuff on there. Yeah, anyway, so on the plus side, it's not going to hurt the tuning really. It's not ideal, but it's not going to make it lose tuning. Now, I'm just looking over this one. There was some talk, I think there was some talk somewhere about a little crack, and I think it might, I was looking at the nut end of things, but it could be this was referred to, was this thing down here. Yeah, which actually doesn't seem to be any sort of problem. But yeah, I'll have a closer look under the lights. But yeah, everything's pretty good about it. Like I say, that the tusk nut is supposed to be, sorry, the new bone nut is supposed to be good quality. I've never liked them on the, I think some of the Harley Bentons had them on, and these, hey look, I've done that thing with the focus just goes completely to pot. The other thing is it's also got glue overspilt onto the finish here as well, or the wood. That actually may have filled, I think there might be a chunk missing that somebody's filled as well, hence the shine. Oh yes, okay, yes, I can see now. So somebody else here has had the problem I had, because vintage are not immune to this. So can you see that somebody's taken the original nut out? Or, well, I think somebody's taken the original nut out and taken a chunk of this finish with it. But on the plus side, it's been out before. So let's have a look at that up close. Yeah, so this is in for a good setup, and the bottom line is Graham wants this to play and stay in tune. It sounds nice, it's got a good tone, but it needs to play and stay in tune. So that will be a few little, that's just a bit of surface stuff. It's good, you know, pretty good shape all round. But yeah, got to play and stay in tune. Like I say, the corduroy wood, the tech wood neck is not my favourite thing. I wonder if I've got, well, I might have a spare set of those kinds of tuners, but you know, not doing anything. But they've already had the original holes filled and refilled and stuff. Personally, for smoothness and gearing, I would recommend some 19 to 1 tuners on here. Those are grungy to hold or to turn. But anyway, let's see what we get. So yeah, so setup and fret level. So let's have a think. Now I had a look at this a bit earlier, had a play a bit earlier, and it would not stay in tune. I also noticed that it had practically little or no relief in the neck at all. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is add a small amount of relief, if I can find the appropriate key. Seems to have tied it up. No, there it is. So I'll put a tiny bit of relief in the neck. Sorry if the picture disappears at this point. So there's more relief in the treble side, which is not uncommon for there to be, you know, a bit of relief on one side and flat as anything on the other. So that's actually quite a lot on one side, and still very little at all on this side. But it's these strings that are going to need the relief more than anything. Okay, so what I'm just going to do now is take the bridge action down to my target. I actually printed out something I was playing yesterday, Dreamer's Ball by Freddie Mercury. I was just enjoying playing it. It's a little jazzy sort of chord sequence that I hadn't played before. And those of you who know it will probably better hear it at the end when I try and play the chord sequence. But anyway, I can't see what you can see. No, I can. Mirror. On the camera, there's a bit of colour bleed into the binding there. Okay. I think I might need to get some new glasses for reading. This is almost 2.5, so it's kind of a millimetre higher than ideally I would like. The lighting is a bit rubbish here, that's what it is. Still a bit too high, and it's got a thin little tune-o-matic bridge on it, so I wouldn't be at all surprised if this thing gave me some grief later on. So a tiny bit down on the treble side, because it's a what am I saying? Its target is 1.5 and 1.2, which is not at all impossible for this kind of neck. Ooh, see, that's pinging in the new bone. Okay, so there we have the set action. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, so it's not great. It's not too bad, but it's not fantastic. There's some high notes, a high fret causing that to choke out of the target action in the middle there. Let's start by getting rid of this. Now you could say to me, but Sam, why don't you fight? Ooh, I don't like these tuners much. Why don't you fight for these for this new bone nut? Well, I won't fight for it because, oh god, it's been swathed in glue. I'm going to give it a little tap and see if it moves. I don't know whether I should be chopping it right to pieces from the very get-go. What am I looking for? I'm looking at my department of tuners, because honestly, I don't like those things. I've got tremolos, I've got strange things, I've got nothing tuners, 3-a-side Wilkinson 19-to-1s, black. Oh, look at these babies. Are these Wilkinson Deluxe? Well, I have to say, all of the holes on here now are wrong because of the way it's been done. There's a bunch of white ones. The cream ones would work better. Well, okay. So there's a couple of choices here which I can offer to Graham. I genuinely think the 19-to-1 Wilkinson 19-to-1 Wilkinsons would be a much better bargain on here. 3-a-side 19-to-1, so we'll keep those out and I will get an email answer later on. Now, here we go. This is the fun part. Shall we take the risk? Did I hang up my hammer? No, I put it there. Let us see how cooperative this nut is going to be. What with all the... Oh my goodness. Okay. It's been glued heavily into place. Yeah, wow. That's a mess. Too much glue, my darlings. So, as you can see, it was already cracked. There's a little bit of extra sticking up crackness, which I can tidy up. But yeah, we don't want that. It doesn't work. We want what works, which is this little baby here. So before I go any further, you might be able to see where some original material was flaked off, but there's another little flake now which I can just put a bit of glue underneath for the time being. Hold it down. It's one of those things, do you spend hours cutting it off with various saws, SAWs, or do you get it to lift under its own steam? Now, we've got, it's in place. Problem is, I don't think I've got any, here we go. We have some very liquid glue. Super glue is hopeless stuff for sitting around. I don't have a fridge to put it in or whatever else some people say works. So I've always got glue that's locking itself in place because of the fact that it's doing what super glue does, which is kind of venting its fumes everywhere, and then they sort of conspire to I see, that's where the glue should go, right. they conspire to it conspires to create white sticky stuff everywhere. Okay, so for this I'm going to, I don't know what you can see, it's probably the worst view ever. I'm going to put my glue there and I'm going to tip this into an angle I can. Now this is very, in fact it's so runny that it's picking up virtually none of it, nor do I think I'll get it to come out through this hole at the top, unless I can drill a hole through it. Bear with me. Hold on a second. Drill. I want something with a bit of a nozzle. Ew, sticky. Well, today is the day after we had our terrible, I'll get another thing by the way, we had a terrible shooting spree down here in Plymouth area, which is incredibly unusual, but it's distressing really to see how, well, just let it happen, but also to see, get some idea of what was going on in the mind of the person, the young man who did it. Obviously, please don't speculate about it and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, distressing really. Right, let's see first of all if I can make the glue just come out. It's coming down the track, that's good. Under there, under there. Let's get a little bit of wood. Hold it in place. Now I should probably have to hold this here forever and a day, which could take a long time, so let me get some activator. Sort of just disappearing out of view for a minute as I press this down. Tissue paper. Okay. Fine. So it's not a very good view, I'm so sorry. So we've got, I'm just looking at this blemish here. This shiny bit here. It does look like something's been filled and sort of scraped back, but let's have a look and see whether I can just flatten it a little bit more, and in doing so perhaps take off some of the shine so it doesn't look quite so extreme. Yeah, there's a little hole that's been filled somewhere along the line. Right, let's just slack these off a little bit more. Okay, I'm just going to do, to start off with, I'm just going to gently try and line this up. It's probably going to tell me that it's a fraction too wide, so just to make sure that it's going to fit well, I'm going to get some sandpaper out. I'm just going to take off any sort of excess. And to do this, I like to make sure that it flattens it along this, a nice flat plane, so that we don't reshape the nut in any way. So if I ever have to thin it down, it's all about taking an equal amount, only a small amount, but an equal amount off the front and back. And the idea is to just see if we can get it to fit comfortably in there without stressing, putting this material under stress. So it's pretty close. yeah, those vintages recently that I've worked on many of them have given me a problem, and you know, we're taking the nut off, and you know, I've had this advice many times over to, what you need to do is you need to, you know, score around the edge of the thing with a blade, and it's nice, it's a nice idea, but it doesn't really work in practice because you literally cannot get any blade into that space whatsoever. There's no gap, so you will not be able to cut through the hard finish in order to force the knife between the nut and the finish. So what I'm just doing here is I'm just seeing if I can make sure that the wooden part is flat with nothing sticking up. Problem is, you see, is the only alternative to taking nuts off at all this way is to kind of surgically remove them bit by bit, and when you sort of do that, you end up having to spend a long time surgically removing them because they don't want to come out, and if you don't surgically remove them completely, then they still want to pull the finish off where it touches the remains of the nut, even if you manage to sort of chop the nut up quite a bit. So I'm just going to have a look. Now that's still not quite wanting to fit in there. So rather than run any risk of breaking any of that lip, which is what I don't like, by the way, about the way they make these guitars. They seem to spray right up to the nut, and often it ends up with the nut being sort of sealed in place, which is no good at all, because it's the adhesion of the brittle finish to the nut which causes the biggest problem. But so what I want is to be able to put this new nut in without compromising or breaking any of that brittle material that's still there. So I think this deserves a better set of tuners for starters. Let's have a look now. Okay, so this may actually be a little bit too high, so I may have to change it out for a lower one, which in turn I may have to why I've only got threes, number threes, ones and threes. Damn it. Yeah, I just have to flatten this out again. Sorry about this. This is a fiddly bit. Terrible view, terrible view. My videos are just terrible. Sorry. So the idea of these adjustable nuts is I want them to begin with the things sitting flush on the strings sitting flush on the first fret. Now the thing about this, it's got a funny, it'll brighten up with some oil, but this doesn't really take oil very well, this tech wood, I've noticed, so it's a bit of an odd substance. I call it corduroy. Okay, so that's about the right sort of height. So I need now to go back in and take off the extra thickness on here. So it fits in nicely. I had an interesting conversation with Kate Wilkinson the other day, slightly unexpected. Those of you who follow my Facebook thing will probably have seen how I came to talk to her, but it all began with, like many of you, you recognise certain guitar parts, brands, and you know them as good or bad or whatever quality. And so you, like me, will know Wilkinson, and you know it's a good quality brand, and the stuff is pretty much always good. So I was looking for, a few weeks ago, I was looking for a Wilkinson, a Wilkinson tremolo bridge for a Strat, and I only ever use the Wilkinson one, and it's got I was looking for a 52.5 millimeter thingy spacing, bridge spacing, which Wilkinson does do one, and I was looking for 52.5 millimeter with a full weight block in chrome, and unfortunately there weren't any for sale, so I found one via Amazon, but it was branded Wilkinson, but it was being sold by Music Lily, who I've also seen around as a budget Chinese manufacturer, and their stuff is okay. You know, it's nothing. It's not high quality at all, really. I mean, without being insulting, it's very definitely budget, and it's okay. And some things, you know, if you don't buy things that are critical, that have to be precision made, then you can get away with, they work pretty well, you know. So anyway, so I saw this tremolo for sale with the Wilkinson branding on it, and I thought to myself, well, okay, it's cheaper, so it was about 20 quid versus the 35, I think, of typically, you know, the equivalent Wilkinson thing. So I decided to give it a go, bought it, and it was okay, but not as good. A noticeable difference in quality. So it worked. Yeah, it worked, but you know, not as good all-round quality as the full-fat Wilkinson. So it got me thinking, it got me wondering, you know, what is the deal with Wilkinson and Music Lily? And I was concerned mainly because I know that there's a lot of, I'm pretty aware, I've seen there's a lot of fake counterfeit stuff on Amazon and eBay. So I wondered whether Music Lily were just knocking out branded things branded with Wilkinson, but you know, with no right to do it. So I thought I'll check with someone who should know. So for some reason I had it in my head that the person who could tell me were the people at JHS, John Hornby Skews, because I know, well, it was my impression that they're behind a lot of Wilkinson. I thought they were behind a lot of Wilkinson things, when in fact what John Hornby Skews or JHS are or do is that they make guitars using a lot of Wilkinson parts, so they're a fan of Wilkinson parts. Anyway, so I sent an email off to JHS, and their managing director, Dennis Drum, the wonderfully named Dennis Drum, wrote me back and said I needed to speak to Kate Wilkinson, and copied her in on the email. And I sent her an email asking her the question, just saying, you know, I and I'm sure many other I and many other players maybe were not clear about the relationship between them and this music lily. Could she enlighten me? And so instead of, rather than ring me back, rather than email me back, she called me back, and we had a nice chat when she clarified for me that Music Lily is in fact a company they have licensed to produce, I suppose, what you would call a more budget version, or at a price point version of their stuff. So that was good to know, because then I said, well, it's great. I can let people I deal with know, if I get asked, I can let people know that this stuff is credible Wilkinson. And apparently the stuff made by the Music Lily company is usually, or is known as M series. So you've got sort of Wilkinson stuff, which I call the full fat stuff, and then you've got Wilkinson M series. And I guess it's a bit like, well, I don't know, but maybe years ago there was something called, or some of the Encore range had what do they call it? Guitar Tech pickups. I don't know who they were. Anyway, it's complicating the story. Anyway, so yeah, M series. So you may have seen guitars with the pickups with little silver letters M series, Wilkinson M series in silver letters. So that means they're a sort of cheaper price Wilkinson. So that helped me to understand that a lot of the stuff that comes out of China with Wilkinson on it, I was avoiding because, I was thinking this is knockoff, but apparently it's not. It's the real thing. However, I will say that the one I have, on the first kind of comparison, the excuse me, the 6-screw tremolo I have from Music Lily, I wouldn't say is as good as the full fat Wilkinson one, and the reason for that is because it's the main thing is it feels more or less the same, but the arm doesn't feel as snug, and one of the main reasons I buy Wilkinson bridges, because for me they're the number one budget, affordable, well, better even if they weren't budget. They have the best. They're absolutely all-round rock solid as a tremolo unit, but they also have the best push-in arm that you can get. So I would go for them on that basis, but particularly because of the arm, they're fantastic. And on the full-fat Wilkinsons, the arm is there's a little grub screw on the back that you tune to make the arm lock up or tighten up a little bit. And on this Chinese one, it was too far down, just a fraction too far down the block, so that on the full fat one, you can make the adjustment with the tremolo loaded, and you can just push it down, do the little adjustment, hold it down, do the adjustment, and then that's you done. On the M series one, the cheaper M series one, I'm fairly sure, I'm pretty convinced that I think on the one I got, certainly the grub screw is a little further down the block, which means it's set deeper in and you actually can't get to it, even when you press the thing down. You depress the arm and it still doesn't reach, still can't get to the grub screw to tighten it up. So I think that kind of defeats the object a little bit, because that arm tightening business is a key aspect of the what makes the Wilkinson tremolo so good. Okay, so a quick look at now you might notice that I'm using the old arm to begin with, because I feel like using both. I've put new paper on both of them today for this guitar, so I'm going to start with the thin one, and then I'm going to do a run past at the end with the stiffer one. So thin and bendy, stiffer and not so bendy, fat and not bendy. So it's telling me nothing touching there, cutting a little bit, not so much there, high fret there, high frets here. Now did we know? Yeah, we knew that one was high. One of these was high. We had 16, so 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. These are low, which makes those high. These are fractionally low. and then there's two low ones here not getting touched at all. So the rod tells me what I need to know, which is yeah, where the neck is curving and bumping. So I'm just going to run a little bit more and see where we contact the low frets, see how long it takes, because that will tell us sort of how low they are. Now, it used to be that I thought the low frets were the result of perhaps the way they were pushed in, and maybe they were squeezed in much harder than everything else. I'm now of the opinion that it's caused by little dips in the fingerboard, which you can't really make out with the human eye, the naked eye, but it's what the tool tells me about them. So what I would expect to find at this point, that one's still, now hear that one? We had the problem with that one before, right? That was where it was slightly, that little choke sound is because these two are low, and that's dictated, or that's indicated by the fact that they haven't cut at all. So the problem with that is that tells us that there's a kind of dip here. It's not that two frets have been hammered in harder. It's unlikely. It's much more likely that the neck, the wood itself, has a little dip. Now the problem with that is, to make this play, we're going to have to, I suppose I would call it, bottom out this little low spot. And the problem with doing that is it costs fret material everywhere else, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to accommodate, accommodate for this dip by bringing the other frets down a little to bottom it out. And really, when it's a dip in the wood, you don't have an awful lot of choice in what you do. You either bottom it out, or you take all the frets out and re-radius, because you know you've got a low spot here, and you don't want a low spot in the wood of the neck if you're looking for an even set of frets. So that's an organic quality of the wood, really. You can't control it. It'll do what it wants over the years. That's playable. That's okay. I just about got there, because I can just see, just kissing this one, and that one's just starting to get touched. But you know, that's what the rod is. A great system, because it tells me what I need to know, and that is that we've got a low spot right there. And as mentioned, there's nothing we can do about it apart from go the whole hog and pull all the frets, radius this flat, and then come back and refret it and start again. But that's quite extreme. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on. Now, we had a bit of choking off over when we were bending the high E's across onto the G track, as I call it. So I want to hear that approve. So that low spot is more on the edge than it is at this point. So on the B track, it's sort of evened out a little bit. We're not having to go as far down to even the frets out. So now the kind of critical one is the G fret, the G track, and the G track where the G string runs. The G track is where you tend to get choke out when you're bending your notes, and that can often be because of slightly uneven frets. So what I'm doing here is I'm just aiming to, if I clean up the G track, that's where we usually clear up the fret choking, or the fret zzz, as we're bending. Remember, it's on a very low action setting, so it's quite a challenge anyway. But I always start off with a heavy challenge, rather than wimping out and setting the action higher. That's always an option if you reach a situation where you can't get it to work the way you want. So what I'm just doing with this, I'm using the sort of flexible bendy one, and if I get to the end of this and I find there's still some fret slap, as I call it, which is different from fret buzz, but if I find some remaining fret slap, then I will employ the Stumac U-channel truss rod and use that to gently scoop out the undulations that cause the fret slap. Not bad. Playing all the way. Good. That's taken care of that. So these aren't very tall frets to begin with. So I don't know what the kind of gauge of frets were on this guitar from the outset, but it's not massively tall. So obviously I want to be as careful anyway as I can, not to end up taking away too much that stuff, fret metal. So let's see how it goes. So the question about how much you're doing now and when do you know when to stop is a matter of experience and practice, but ultimately it's based on do all the notes play well, which they do. Now there's just a very slight hint of choke. I'm going to go back to the G track one more time, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just redo it, with this time with a little bit of pressure downwards on this end. I just want to ease out that little bit of choke that we hear as I bend across into the G track, and that's as much as I want to do. And if it's going to work, it's going to work, and if it isn't, it isn't. So, and I'll move on because I know the terrain. But so we'll just get the leveling done. Like I say, if the notes all play pretty well, then I won't feel the need to go over it with the other one. And the reason I'm thinking of using two different rods is this one's great. This one really is good for the leveling part of it, and the stiffer one is very good for removing or helping to just open up the space a little bit by mapping its curve onto the fingerboard, and in doing so it creates a little tiny bit more extra room for the strings to move and can alleviate what I call fret slap, which is the frets just touching, the strings just touching the frets when they spin. It's different from fret buzz, as I call it, because fret buzz tends to be found on specific frets that are high or caused by high or low frets, and that's only in a specific area, whereas what I call string slap tends to be all the way up the string. Good, that's very good. So, one more to do. Now, the question is, what I will do is I will ask Graham about the tuners later on. What am I doing? I'm all in the wrong place for this. Get yourself in gear, boy. Yeah, I'll ask a question about the tuners, and I can do those last. And I think they're not going to make the back of this any prettier because there's already been two sets of tuners put in, and because they're both they're particular kinds of tuners, so they both have diagonal tuner screw fittings, and they're actually opposite to each other, so that's maximized the number of holes and these 19 to 1s would actually put some new holes in again. So the downside is that it might start to look feel a little bit Swiss cheesy up at that end, but it depends on, you know, how smooth you want it to be. I think some quality black tuners on there would be just a tiny bit more at the 12th fret. Yeah, it would a smoother tuner would make a better tuning experience, but it won't make it stay more or less in tune, because that's really down to the nut and the stretching out of the slack in the strings. That's the important thing. So what we've got up here is we've got a low spot here as well, high here, low here. So we had a low edge down here, a low edge here, and we've got a low edge here. So a kind of dip there on that side but not on this side, and a dip on this side but not on that side. Organic weirdness for you. And you can tell it's a dip because these up here have got hit very hard and nothing touched down there. But it should still play. Yeah. Okay, that is good, believe it or not. It's very, very fine, and I'm not going to do anything else with the leveling because that's where I want it. What I do want is the string unwinder and the cutters for cutting wires. So we're going to take off the strings. Now when you've got a adjustable tusk nut fitted, recommend you take the strings off from the outside inwards and put them on from the inside out, just so that the thing doesn't flip off. It's quite snugly fitted anyway, but it can flip off if you don't do it in this order, but that's entirely up to you. So the reason I go a bundle on these tusk adjustable nuts with the bases is because I think you get the best possible deal for tuning stability. You get tusk material, which is PTFE, you know, so it's sort of the slippiest compound known to British industry, and also because we're able to raise it up from its position, you know, from touching the first fret, we raise the nut up, and so we get the perfect action without having to cut into the slots with any nut files. Now some people say, well, why have you got expensive nut files? Because sometimes you have to do it. You might have to make a custom one, in which case a custom nut, in which case you've got to cut it from scratch, from a blank, and you need those files. But I would much rather we end up with the nut being an unmolested factory slots, which we can raise up on feet to the correct action, because then if we have that, then we have the best possibility of tuning stability, and that's what I'm all about getting. Right, so we've got quite a zoomed out view here. Probably got the massively zoomed out thing going on, but that's okay, at least we can see. So next bit here is to re-polish these. Now we have set a very low action, and some people who watch these videos go, that's a ridiculously low action, no player ever would want it that low, or a good player shouldn't ever want an action that low, and that's okay, you know, to each their own. Customers who come to me, whether you might want to call them inexperienced or foolish or whatever, they come to me and they tend to want that action, so I do it because I prefer it myself, but also I do it because they want it. Now of course they can always raise it up again from where I've set it at. That's a given. So I have basically lowered it, or I've conditioned the frets for the lowest feasible playing action, and if somebody wants higher than that, they can obviously dial up the bridge and or the nut as well. So I'm just scraping the wire brushing this file to give it a little clean off as I use it. So yeah, again this, so I think Graham said something about this being fairly new. And I can't really testify to whether it is or isn't. The frets don't have wear grooves in them, but the tuners have definitely been changed. I think the nuts being changed and a new bone one put on, hence the too much glue and the slight cracking of the finish. And the flats. There you go. The flats are a little bit fret for my liking to start with, and I don't think this is normal for a vintage guitar. I think they would come with taller frets than this. So I have a feeling this has been worked on or played for a while. I don't think it's as new as it might want to appear. However, with this now taken care of, it should play beautifully well and stay in tune. But as always, I can't stress the business of stretching the slack out of the strings. The strings that came on this guitar had tons of slack in them, and it was going out of tune all over the place. Not helped by the new bone, which was pinging, as you heard, and not also helped probably a bit by the tuners, which were didn't operate very smoothly when you came to try and retune. Although I must stress that these things will keep it in tune perfectly well. They're just a bit clunky to use. That's the only complaint I've got about them. They're imprecise in operation. That's all. So they don't feel great, but they don't let the strings go out of tune in any way. There's also some paint on here, spilled paint on the fingerboard, some cherry paint. That's interesting. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's just a little spill that's run across the fingerboard. Somebody asked me on YouTube today, they were looking at a choice of buying a Harley Benton Junior, double cut Junior style, or the Wilkinson one, the vintage one. And I think I still prefer the vintage ones, although in some ways, possibly apart from hardware, there's not a lot in it in terms of build, in my experience. Although in some of the vintage guitars there definitely is. They do, the AV6 and the neck, the sort of Strat necks, I much prefer on the JHS vintage family guitars and the Encore family. I've always liked those necks. Good start point. But this is a little different in that I think this is probably the first vintage I've seen using this material, and it sort of dates it to about possibly 3 years or so ago, maybe. Okay, so now having I can always take this out anytime I want now by just dialing it up. So now I'm in a position to clean this down a little bit and get into polishing out or sanding and then polishing out the frets, which I'll do off camera because I also have to go in the other room and take care of a bit more gold spraying. Gold sprayer. So I'm just going to wipe off some of the dust and some of the pen while I'm at it. It'll get dusty and filthy again, so I'll need to do this again, but at least this clears a lot of it out of the way to begin with. As you can see, it's a messy biz. So I won't put any oil on it now, no matter how dry it looks or how much I'm tempted, because I don't want the I don't want the oil to cause the masking tape to fall off. I want the masking tape to stick during the sanding and polishing process. And so if you've seen my stuff before, you'll know, is that little, yeah, little patch of cherry still there? You'll know that I will sand and then sand out through a series of grades of paper from 400 to 600 to 1000 to 1500, and then I will go into what will I do then? I'll go into micro mesh papers, which will then go through from 1500 through to 12,000, and then it will be polished out to a nice playing condition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a stop, going to have a cup of tea, so I'm going to charge everything again and come back. I might even get an email off to Graham in the meantime to see if he wants to change out these. That's horrible. Eek. Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, yeah, so we've replaced the tuners with some decent quality Wilkinson tuners. Yes, so what I'm going to do now, and we've cleaned everything, polished the guitar, obviously sanded out the frets and polished them out. So we've just really, all we've got left to do now is string it and stretch the strings and check the intonation, or set the intonation. Now, knowing these Tune-o-matic bridges as I do, I'm half expecting trouble. So let's start with we'll string up the strings first, and then we'll, once they're in, then we'll attach them. We'll go, remember, from the middle to outwards, so the G and the D first. So yeah, so I think it was a surprise for Graham that the tuners weren't original. Something else I noticed about this guitar is that the pickups are M series. I didn't even notice that. So these pickups may well, I don't know this, but I don't remember seeing a vintage VS or a vintage model guitar with M series pickups on it. According to what Kate Wilkinson told me, these are the budget end of Wilkinson, so they are sort of they only come, well, all parts come from China pretty much, but these definitely come from China at a budget price. So I'm not sure I've seen a Wilkinson. Sorry, I'm not sure I've seen a vintage guitar with M series pickups on before. So these may also have been changed. I mean, it's a bit of a faff for the previous owner to have changed it. I don't quite really know what the advantage would be of, I mean, you know, you might sort of take off the original Wilkinsons and say, well, they're kind of usable. Well, they are usable, but they're not kind of so much different if I understand it. But anyway, we've got easy lock tuners here, but I'm not going to use the easy lock part. I never do. I just prefer to use my normal stringing system, which is to string it through all the way through like this, pull back 1 fret's worth, hold it down and start to wind on, and as it comes over, allow the loose string to go under the held string, or guide it under if you have to, and then as the loose string comes around, pull it up and push the held string underneath the sticking up loose string as it comes around the second time. So what you get is a kind of locking thing going on there. Now this, you have to watch out it doesn't fall off the saddle, which that just did, and then we do the same at this end, the same with the D, sorry I should say. Pull it through, sit it on the saddle, hold it, pull it back 1 fret, wind on. So hold it up and guide it over the loose one, and then as it comes around, under the loose one, and pull the loose one up just to keep it out of the way. And that is, to me, that's as good as using, I don't like to use the easy lock part, and the reason why is it, I think in my experience, it encourages you to be kind of lazy or expect the thing to hold it in place, when in fact it does on the wound strings, but I've noticed in the past it can allow, if you just do the 90-degree kink, using the two different holes, the way the Easy Lock tuner's designed, I don't quite like it on the plain strings, so I just do my same thing. And I use these tuners because I like Wilkinson tuners, whether they've got the Easy Lock or not, that's not really important to me. So, Graham, when you come to restring it, you can either use the Easy Lock thing that shows on YouTube. Plenty of places show how to use it, or you can do as I'm doing, which is treat it like a normal tuner. I'm using the top post because I want the thing to go under it. So pull back a fret, let the loose one go under the held one first time, and then as it comes around, push the held one down, pull up the loose one, and let the held one go under the loose one, and then just tighten it off. So what I noticed in the guitar when I tried it out today is that the tuning stability was really, really bad, and it had a lot to do with the slack still left in the strings, which I go on about all the time, but it's such an important part of the tuning stability of the guitar. So that I really encourage you to think of it in two simple terms, right? 50% of your tuning stability comes down to your condition of your nut slots. That's why I fit the adjustable nut out of tusk, right? So that takes care of the nut slots. They're well cut, they're at the right height to give the perfect first fret action, and they are made of PTFE impregnated material, which means they have a natural thingamy lubrication. So all that stuff is really true, but that's 50% of the tuning equation, the tuning stability equation. Okay, the other 50% is making sure that you've pulled all of the slack out of your strings. Oh, sorry, bash. Now, people have various different ideas about this, and some people think you can just tension everything up, leave it overnight, and it'll sort itself out by the morning. Let me just pull this round here so I can cut it off. Yeah, people think it will sort of sort itself out by the morning and it will stabilize. It just doesn't work like that. It's going to store slack in these strings, some unreleased slack. Doesn't really matter technically where it's held. It's probably mostly held in the coils a little bit, only a little bit, but there is some in the whole overall train, as I call it, the string train from start to finish. So what I kind of tend to do is give it first of all a full pull to get it seated. Now, Graham mentioned to me again in an email something about he'd either noticed or been told there was some very fine cracking between the fingerboard and the neck, and unless it's a tiny little bit under right at the edge of the nut, I can't see it. I can see the one at the back, which I noticed, but I can't for the life of me spot. There's a bit flaked off under the nut there, but I can't see any literally down here, so that's not really apparent to me, but hey, I could be wrong. Now, having taken everything off, including all the nuts and bolts, all these things, stock bars and posts and whatnot. Oh wow, this isn't on properly. So I can get this bridge. Thank you, bridge seat properly. Yeah, I've had all the bits off to clean and polish everything out. As you can see, it's nice and shiny. So now I need to go back and make sure this is done up to the right sort of height. So obviously it's a guesstimate to begin with, but the nice thing about this is once you've done set your action, you can dial it back in whenever you want. The neck will behave the same because we've leveled and treated the frets down to that target action. So we can always just dial it back in. Doesn't matter if we lose it. Now I'm just going to very quickly adjust the nut again because it's too low on the treble side, because again I've had that out of its saddle thing. Right, now I'm going to double check the heights again. Too low, so we go back up. We want about 1.2 on there. Oh, that is low. There's no point going too low and just for the sake of it. We'll just be making trouble for ourselves, because I've only leveled it down to the 1.5 and 1.2. I'm going to do a bit of research just out of interest about whether the VSA500 comes with M series pickups or not, because that's a surprise to me. I mean, it might well do, but again, I think it's one of the slightly obscure, opaque things that we talked about with Kate Wilkinson, who said that she was putting up a page on the website kind of clarifying this and talking about their different products from different countries. Oh yeah. I've tightened up the jack socket as well. I just realised I don't have a guitar strap, so I can't put it on a strap and play it. I don't think I've got one kicking around in here either. Where do all my guitar straps live? They all must be... Sorry about this. Nope, they are definitely not here. That's crazy. I throw a load of those really cheap ones away and then I find myself without one. No, haven't got one. So anyway, so the thing about this, you may not get to hear me play my little tune after all of that. Right, the thing I just want to point out with the tuning is once you've tuned it up like that and got it set where you want it, what you need to do is you need to continue to stretch it. So I get thumb and forefinger and push and stretch very vigorously. Obviously you want to be careful you don't bust strings. It's quite easy to do. 10s like these, not so easy to break, but 9s and 8s you can easily bust a top E. So I'm going to just take it easy with the high E on here. But this is really what you want to do, and the bottom line is you want to do this until it stops detuning. It's detuned, so it's still got slack in there. That shows you how much. Then you want to give it some more pulls and some more big stretchy notes. And you want to do this quite simply until it stops detuning, and that's the only point you want to stop, because when you stop then you will be in tune when you play and when you reach for it on the shelf, on the peg. See, nearly there now. Now, if you don't squeeze out all of this slack, you don't squeeze it all out, it'll come out when you're playing. And you don't want that. My little piece of tune playing acoustically because I can't plug the amp in there now. Now, if you know Dream's Ball by Queen, no, the wrong bit. Where's it gone? Take me, take me, take me to the dreamer's ball. I'll be right on time, and I'll dress so fine. You're gonna love me when you see me, I won't have to worry. Take me, promise not to wake me till it's morning and it's all been true. Yeah, except Freddie sang it an octave higher. It's a lovely little round. Sorry, I'm playing it rather clumsily, but you know, that's a chord sequence. It's gorgeous. No. Only played 3. I can't do the one that's over there. And it's dum 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 dum. Oh, da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Get in the right place. No, no, just no. There we have it. Nicely in tune now. There, a little bit of Dream's Ball by Freddie Mercury. Go on, get me copyright bots. I bet you can't. They will. That'll be a tribute to my skills. No. Okay, so look, I'm going to put the original horrible tuners in the bag. They're going back, along with the the new bone nut. As I say, I think the proof of the pudding, some people will go, but some people just love to come on the YouTube and tell me how that guitar ships with a such and such nut and I shouldn't want to change it and what's wrong with me. Well, this nut, the original nut, was pinging. By the way, there's the key for adjusting the adjustable nut. The nut was pinging and causing it to go out of tune. So as far as I'm concerned, if I kept it on, I would still need to be doing some filing of the slots to get them to A, stop them pinging, i.e. widen them enough, and B, get them to the right height. So all of that would have required extra sort of cutting work into the slots, which in my book hampers the perfection of the tuning stability, and I don't think it's a good trade-off, really. As simple as that. Okay, hope that was interesting. We're ready to go. Well, we're not going back because tomorrow I'm going to be doing the other guitar, and that's the Faith Venus acoustic, and I've got a nut here hanging up waiting to go on that one if we need to. It already has what appears to be a tusk nut on it, but we shall see. Again, if it's not functioning correctly, we shall swap it out as I did here. Obviously, well, I say obviously, not an adjustable one on the acoustic, although I have them on my acoustics and there's absolutely no discernible difference. So there we are. Just a little thing whilst I was showing you doing the what's that thing called? You know, that thing there. While I was doing that, I was also in between going out and spraying this, which is going to be JT's L Red, Candy Apple Red. So next stage will be the Trans Red, and then when I get a chance after that, we'll be down to the clear satin, or satin clear, I should say. Yeah, it's not, I mean, I like how it's gone on. It's very smooth. Shows up imperfections in sanding and stuff. That's always my downfall. Pretty difficult to get an absolutely spray-ready, perfect sanding job done. I haven't quite worked out how the hell you do that yet, but that's going to be fun to put them together. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow on the next one of Graham's guitars. Bye for now.